You ever have that feeling? That just gut-wrenching, stomach-dropping sensation when someone you really trusted, someone you were absolutely counting on, just suddenly shatters everything.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was, I don't know, a friend spilling a secret you begged them to keep quiet. Or maybe a partner letting you down in a way you just never saw coming.
Hmm.
That feeling, being totally let down, really hurt, maybe even feeling a bit silly for believing in them. It's incredibly common, isn't it? That really raw sting of betrayal.
It absolutely is. And that
Yeah.
feeling, that really deep impact, that's exactly the complex stuff we're getting into today.
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're here to pull out the most vital bits of insight from complicated topics, basically giving you a shortcut to being well informed.
Hmm.
We try to find some surprising facts, maybe a little humor, keep you hooked.
Right.
So for you, our listener, our mission today is to really take a comprehensive journey, a deep dive into the very multifaceted world of betrayal. We're
Yeah.
going beyond just that initial pain. We want to explore not just what happens when others betray us, but also that often missed and frankly incredibly damaging thing,
Yeah.
self-betrayal.
That's exactly right. And for this deep dive, we're pulling insights from Joseph Chipinfo Mago's work, not you. It's really insightful stuff.
It is.
Our goal is to give you a really thorough understanding. Like, what does betrayal actually mean? What's its real lasting impact? Why? Why does it even happen? How can you spot the signs maybe before the worst happens?
Yeah, the indicators.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, how do you navigate that pain? How do you find a genuinely positive way forward and maybe even, grow stronger from these incredibly tough experiences?
Think of this as your sort of essential guide. It's a universal human experience, right?
Mhm.
So whether you've felt that sharp sting of someone else's disloyalty, or maybe you've wrestled with your own patterns of self-sabotage, maybe self-betrayal,
Mhm.
we want to offer you not just like theoretical ideas, but actual practical tools
Yeah.
for resilience, for healing, and ultimately for just greater self-awareness. It's
Yeah.
really about equipping you to move forward, not just recover.
Yeah.
So let's really dig in.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The author, he kicks off right away with a really powerful statement about trust. He says, and I'm quoting here, if there's no trust of any type, there is no way that we're going to progress. That's huge, isn't it?
It really is.
It makes you stop and think how fundamental trust is, not just personally, but like for society as a whole. He presents it not just as something nice to have, but as the actual bedrock of human progress.
It's a really compelling place to start. And what's fascinating is how he connects that absence of trust to profound, really long-term anguish, melancholy.
Right.
He points out that this deep fear of being misled, of being betrayed, it can actually push people into isolation. They might choose to work completely alone, just terrified of collaborating or relying on anyone ever again. It's a self-protection thing, sure, but it ultimately limits their own growth, their ability to connect. And it mirrors that bigger societal stagnation he mentions. So this isn't just feeling sad. It's like a fundamental rewiring of how you interact with the world, driven by this primal fear of being vulnerable. That can have lifelong effects.
So, okay, if trust is this absolutely essential foundation, what exactly is betrayal? The author gives a really clear definition, I thought. He calls it an act of purposeful disloyalty.
Purposeful, that's key.
Yeah, and the example he gives is super relatable. A friend is telling your deepest secrets to others. He calls it treacherous, and you immediately get it. He even goes into the word's origin, explaining betray comes from Middle English betrayen, meaning mislead or deceive. So that linguistic root really highlights it's always about a deliberate undermining of trust.
Precisely. At its core, betrayal is about defeating someone's trust, often through deception. But it's also deeply subjective, which is a really crucial point the author makes. He emphasizes it's one's perception of being wounded as a result of the purposeful actions or omissions of a trusted individual. So that underlines that while the act might be clear-cut, the experience of being betrayed is intensely personal, emotionally charged.
Right, how you feel it.
Exactly. And common types, he lists things like, outright dishonesty, adultery, disloyalty in various forms, revealing private information detrimentally. These aren't usually accidents. They're typically deliberate choices violating some agreement of trust, spoken or unspoken. And that leads to this profound discomfort, often trauma. The impact just ripples outwards.
And the impact, wow, the author really breaks down those immediate and those lasting negative effects. He talks about shock, profound loss, sadness, that almost morbid preoccupation with what happened.
Yeah, replaying it over and over.
Totally. And damaged self-esteem, that insidious self-doubt that just creeps everywhere, intense wrath. He points out it's not unusual for these emotional aftershocks to lead to behaviors that are genuinely life-changing. What really struck me is that ripple effect on our overall well-being. It's not just a moment of pain, it's like a fundamental shift in how we see the world.
And if you think about this in a sort of broader context, these emotional impacts can sadly escalate. They can lead to much more severe consequences, things like anxiety disorders, and even a concept the author calls mental contamination.
Mental contamination, what does that mean exactly?
Well, he explains this really chilling idea where the person who betrays another person frequently becomes a source of contamination themselves.
Yeah.
It's like their very presence, or even just the memory of them, taints your sense of safety, your sense of cleanliness, your trust in the world. It leads to this deep psychological aversion.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. And the author details how betrayal, especially when it comes from our absolute closest circles, loved ones, family, partners, it can lead to self-exile, a profound withdrawal from connection. And alarmingly, there was a 2023 study by Maya Spencer in the British Medical Journal. It found a direct correlation between interpersonal issues caused by betrayal and things like attempted suicide and self-inflicted injuries, like poisoning.
Oh my gosh.
It's a stark, really sobering reminder of the profound, potentially life-threatening psychological toll betrayal can take.
But then, just as you're sort of sinking under the weight of all that immense pain, the author throws in this surprising and actually incredibly hopeful twist. He says, even if individuals may betray us, this does not mean that the world has come to an end.
Right, life goes on.
Exactly. Life must go on. He even says we're required to forgive, actually, to free ourselves from that huge burden of sadness and bitterness. And he makes this powerful distinction. Weak individuals are the ones who betray others, not powerful people. People that are strong constantly make an effort to deliver their best.
That's a really empowering perspective.
It is. He urges us not to feel horrible if we were misled after genuinely giving our best. He reminds us their actions don't diminish our worth or the integrity of our efforts. It's a huge shift, really, moving from feeling like a victim to feeling empowered.
Okay, so moving from the just sheer devastation of betrayal, let's talk more about the depth of that pain. This isn't just a minor hurt, right? It's a wound that goes really deep, sometimes leaves scars that just don't seem to heal quickly. There's a quote from author Heather Brewer in 2011. She captured it perfectly. The most excruciating agony in the world is not limited to the physical realm. More than any other kind of emotional suffering that a person could experience could match the betrayal of a friend.
Wow, yeah.
And Mineko Iwasaki in 2013 added another layer, saying, if you stab the body, it will mend, but if you are injured in the heart, the wound will endure a lifetime. These words really hammer home the unique, lasting agony of emotional wounds, especially from someone you trusted deeply. And this raises a really vital question. Why? Why do people do this? Why engage in behavior that causes such lasting wounds and often, in the process, lose relationships that, as the author references in his other work, The Triangle of Life, would have been crucial later on.
Right.
Understanding these underlying causes isn't about excusing the betrayal, it never is, but it's absolutely critical for our own healing. Knowing why can help us sort of depersonalize the act. See it as coming from the betrayer's issues, not as something that reflects on our own worth.
Yeah, that makes sense. The author gives us a general list of reasons first, which kind of sets the stage. Things like selfish motives, lack of empathy, deep insecurity, power dynamics, simple miscommunication sometimes, and just a lack of accountability or integrity.
Right, the basics.
But then he goes deeper into the psychological categories, and that's where the real understanding seems to start.
Indeed.
Right.
Looking through that psychological lens, the reasons kind of sort themselves out, each with its own why. First, there's unmet needs. If someone feels their emotional, physical, or even spiritual needs aren't being met in a relationship or their close circle, they might desperately look elsewhere for fulfillment. This could look like joining a group that gossips, or even more sinister stuff like spying to gain favors from authority figures. It's often a misguided attempt to fill a void.
Right, trying to get something they feel they're missing.
Exactly. Then think about a lack of communication.
Yeah.
Ineffective or just absent communication. That can lead to huge misunderstandings, festering resentments. In those cases, betrayal can become this really twisted coping mechanism, a destructive way to express anger or just cry out for attention. Not healthy, obviously, but for some, maybe the only way they know how to communicate that deep distress. Then there's the powerful pull of the desire for novelty. that craving for something different, something more exciting than what they have. The author points out this is pretty common in marriages or long-term relationships that have become kind of monotonous. The allure of new experiences or external validation can sadly lead to infidelity or deep disloyalty.
The grass is greener idea.
Sort of, yeah. And unresolved issues play a big, often tragic role, too. People battling their own internal struggles, past traumas. They might use betrayal as a distorted solution or a way to divert attention from their own pain.
Like what?
The author gives these really powerful, heartbreaking examples. A parent favoring one child, giving them amazing opportunities while neglecting others. Or an abused domestic worker doing something seen as betrayal to maybe alleviate their distress, get attention, or secure favors. It's a tragic cycle where personal pain fuels destructive behavior that hurts others.
That's heavy.
It is. Insecurity is another huge driver, that relentless hunt for external validation. Betrayal can become this twisted way to get attention, feel affirmed by others, often at someone else's expense. Low self-esteem, lack of self-worth are usually underneath. The author challenges us, asking, let us take ourselves as having value of some kind. It speaks to that deep belief within the betrayer that they aren't enough, so they seek boosts externally, often hurting people in the process.
And that ties into the next one, right? Lack of empathy.
Absolutely, hand in hand. Narcissism is a prime example. Someone who struggles to understand or genuinely relate to others' feelings. They'll show total indifference to the pain they cause. This emotional disconnect often goes with dishonesty because they just don't care about the fallout. Mental health issues can also contribute significantly. The author notes psychiatric professionals suggest conditions like chronic depression, severe anxiety, or substance use disorders can make people more prone to act in ways seen as betrayal.
Or maybe more likely to be victims of it, too.
Exactly, victims too. And this sadly erodes trust, causes deep feelings of inadequacy, humiliation, self-blame, leading to self-estrangement even from potential close friends.
Wow.
Finally, there are external factors. Things like overwhelming social or societal pressures, cultural choices. The universal desire to belong can lead to painful choices. Sometimes people feel rejected by one group, and the only way they see to gain acceptance elsewhere is to betray their current community, relationships, or values.
Like politicians.
Yeah, the author uses that potent example. Politicians vying for office, maybe extorting money or influence, making promises, only for the communities they promised to serve to feel deeply betrayed later. It's a stark reminder that even seemingly external pressures can push people into treacherous acts. But again, understanding these reasons, it's not about justifying the betrayal. Ever.
Right. Explanation, not excuse. So beyond the why behind the act itself, the author also gives us specific traits of people who might be prone to treachery, which is really helpful for maybe understanding the betrayer or spotting patterns. He starts with entitlement. Describes people who genuinely think they're superior, like immune to the rules. They'll actively orchestrate betrayal, especially in politics or spiritual circles, just to boost their own position and dodge consequences. It's a dangerous mindset.
Yeah, and closely related is irresponsibility. These are folks who often use lies, falsehoods, as a kind of get-out-of-jail-free card. They refuse to accept responsibility. Whether it's outright lies or subtle omissions, lies are always a profound betrayal to the victim because they kill truth, another cornerstone of trust. It's just an unwillingness to face the music.
Then there's unscrupulous behavior. For these people, betrayal is just cold, calculated, a means to an end, a tool for personal advantage, no matter the devastation it causes others, just a complete lack of integrity, a moral compass gone wrong.
And maybe the most basic one, sheer selfishness. Often betrayal just boils down to prioritizing your own demands, your immediate satisfaction over the needs and feelings of others involved, a spouse, a friend, the relationship itself, an inability to see past your own immediate desires or gain.
The author also points to a profound lack of commitment. It sounds harsh, but people who betray you might just not care enough to really prioritize your well-being or the relationship. They might see relationships as disposable resources, easily tossed aside as something better comes along. He uses that powerful example of a politician constantly switching parties without clear reason, calling them pure opportunists.
Which leads right into opportunistic behavior. That's about taking advantage of situations purely for self-interest, with zero regard for ideals, agreements, or the impact on others. Just seizing advantages, even if it means directly harming someone or getting favors you don't deserve.
Yeah.
But what's really insightful here and important to remember is that these traits, they're rarely isolated. People can show a mix of them in different degrees, and circumstances matter hugely. Just having certain traits doesn't automatically mean someone will betray. We need that nuance so we don't jump to wrong conclusions ourselves, right? We don't want to fall into that same trap of premature judgment.
That's a really important point. Human behavior is just so complex. Okay, but let's shift focus now to something maybe more actionable. How can we protect ourselves? Nobody wants to go through betrayal, obviously, but knowing the signals, the red flags, maybe that can shield you from the absolute worst of it. The author really emphasizes that proactively removing toxic people from your life, friends, family, partners, whoever, is hugely beneficial for your mental health. Lots of mental health pros say cutting ties isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation.
And this brings up a fascinating question.
Mm-hmm.
Are there always indicators? The author even looks at one of history's most famous betrayals. Did Jesus see signs from Judas?
Good question.
The biblical accounts, he notes, don't really show obvious signs beforehand. The only tangible evidence is that dramatic kiss in Gethsemane when Jesus says, "Judas, you betray your master with a kiss."
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes betrayal is incredibly subtle, maybe even hidden in plain sight like an act of affection, right up until that devastating final moment. But, in our own lives, information is power. Knowing these symptoms, these patterns, it can absolutely lessen the damage, help us make informed choices.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are these specific behavioral indicators we should look out for? First, the author mentions not acting like themselves, kind of like masking. If someone who is always kind, open, trustworthy, suddenly starts acting weird, withdrawn, secretive, unusually defensive, that's a big red flag,
Right.
especially if there's this sort of underlying guilt or a feeling they're scheming something. He gives that classic example, partners suddenly accusing each other of cheating when they're the ones actually doing it. It's deflection, right?
Yeah.
Trying to shift blame, maybe get pity, take the heat off themselves.
A really common, often missed indicator, their story changes or double. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Deceivers, whether hiding betrayal or just avoiding accountability, they'll often fudge information, dodge direct questions, build these elaborate, inconsistent defenses.
Yeah, you can feel it when something's off.
Exactly. Truthful people, they usually give consistent accounts, so big discrepancies in details, or if they keep arguing off topic, that should raise suspicion.
Yeah.
They might even physically fidget, topple things, show clear discomfort with facing the truth head on.
Or, here's a simpler one, but powerful. They have burned others around you. If you see someone constantly trash-talking, gossiping about, betraying other people, friends, colleagues, whoever, it's a really strong sign, a reliable predictor. They'll eventually do the same to you. It's just their pattern.
And you are being avoided for no cause. That's another signal worth paying attention to. If someone close suddenly starts avoiding you with no clear reason, it can often stem from their own guilt.
Could be other things, though, right?
Sure, it could be they want to end the friendship, they're angry, maybe just going through something tough. But if the avoidance feels totally out of character and you just get that persistent bad vibe about it, it could mean they're doing something hurtful behind your back.
Then there's that general feeling of envy about you. This one feels particularly sneaky, I think. It's when someone sees you as a competitor for no good reason, even though life isn't a race. The author says people can get very ugly when they secretly or even openly see you as a rival for attention, success, whatever. He advises just ignoring overtly envious people often works best, takes away their chance for sabotage, which might be their goal anyway.
And envy is often tied to a general feeling of insecurity, isn't it?
Yeah.
That often goes hand in hand with seeing others as threats, not friends.
Yeah.
The author asks, why do people cheat? Often, he suggests, it's a desperate attempt to feel good about themselves, to know they still got it, that insecure drive for external validation. You see this a lot in workplaces, too. Fears about promotions, job security, people betraying colleagues to get ahead. Studies show a strong link between disloyalty and deep insecurity, showing up as infidelity, gossip, withholding information, all from that fear of rejection or not being enough.
Another really clear one, when there's a definite incentive for betrayal, you see this in competitive offices, obviously, but even in places like churches or community groups sometimes,
Right.
The idea is simple. People are more likely to betray if they stand to gain something big, promotion, money, status, even just safety. The author gives that incredibly chilling example of Anne Frank, possibly betrayed by a fellow Jew working for the Nazis to ensure his own safety.
That's a powerful, extreme example of how incentives can drive horrific acts.
Absolutely. You might also notice a potential betrayer spending more time with new people. A sudden, unexplained shift in their social circle or how they prioritize time with you, that can be a flag.
Hmm.
Suddenly they're too busy, always choosing strangers or new acquaintances over you. Making new friends is normal, of course, but be cautious if new connections always take precedence or if they get overly secretive about these new people.
And finally, a really personal one. They begin to demean or belittle you. If someone who used to be kind, respectful, supportive suddenly starts disrespecting you, being passive-aggressive, or even openly abusive, that's a strong symptom of possible betrayal, either happening or coming soon.
Why would they do that?
The author suggests they might be subconsciously or even consciously trying to give you an indirect out, an excuse for you to end the connection rather than them being upfront about it, maybe testing your limits, pushing you away so they don't have to be the bad guy.
Okay.
What's really key here is that while one single action doesn't guarantee betrayal, a mix or a persistent pattern of these things, that absolutely warrants an open, honest chat and definitely a reassessment of the trust you've placed.
Right.
The author hammers home that trust is the cornerstone of any relationship. Once it's badly broken, it's incredibly challenging to rebuild. So the very first step in protecting yourself is cultivating that deep awareness of the signs and having the strength to face painful truths, no matter how uncomfortable they are.
So, okay, given all that, what does this mean for how we should respond when we are betrayed? The author is really clear. Do not seek revenge.
That's a tough one for many people.
It is. But he argues holding on to that destructive mindset is just harmful to you. It actively blocks your own recovery and healing. He advises that rebuilding the relationship to your greatest ability is preferable than to lower oneself to the level of the betrayer. And this is challenging but crucial. He says it doesn't matter if they apologize or not. What matters for your peace is actively choosing to approach them, express your feelings, and ultimately extend forgiveness regardless of their response. It's for you, not for them.
That distinction is so important. Forgiveness for your own freedom.
Exactly. Now, this next section, it's maybe the most counterintuitive, maybe the most challenging part of this whole discussion. The author suggests the fallout from betrayal isn't necessarily bad, which is frankly incredibly hard to wrap your head around when you're feeling that raw pain.
Right. How can betrayal be good?
He goes as far as saying betrayal is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to grow up and change in ways we never would have under other conditions. He quotes the football coach Lou Holtz. It is not the burden itself that leads to failure. Rather, it is the method in which you carry it that is the source of failure. That's a profound reframing, isn't it? Shifts the focus from the external wound to our internal response.
Thinking about that in a broader context, the author is suggesting that betrayal, despite its undeniable immense pain, can actually fuel profound personal development, empowerment even. It's about actively channeling that intense pain, that raw rage, into something constructive instead of letting it consume you.
Like emotional alchemy.
Kinda, yeah. Turning that destructive negative experience into a catalyst for self-improvement, inner resilience, turning lead into gold, emotionally speaking.
Okay, so how does that seemingly impossible transformation actually happen? He starts with the gift of self-discovery. He brings in that Nelson Mandela quote. It is not the ability to never fall that is the greatest beauty in living. Rather, it is the ability to rise up each time we fall.
Betrayal, he explains, can be this potent catalyst for diving deep into yourself. It's never easy, but it can be truly transformative. When you're hit with the harsh reality of being betrayed by someone trusted, it forces you to step back, reevaluate your relationships, your core values, even your deepest sense of who you are. It's a forced but maybe necessary period of introspection.
And while that reflection can be excruciatingly painful, uncomfortable, it very often leads to significant realizations, a more thorough, authentic understanding of yourself. For instance, you might painfully realize you've been pouring your energy into people who don't value you. Or maybe you've been consistently putting others' needs way ahead of your own well-being.
Right.
This brings up a critical question. How can we, after something so painful, get a clearer grasp on these patterns, these vulnerabilities, to make real positive adjustments? Betrayal, in a way, holds up this painful but incredibly clear mirror to our own choices, showing us where our boundaries might have been too weak. And that heightened self-awareness leads naturally to the opportunity for personal growth. There's that Japanese proverb, right? Stand up 8 times after falling 7 times.
Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Yeah.
The author frames betrayal as this one-of-a-kind opportunity to mature, to grow in ways we just couldn't have in comfortable times. It's a chance to learn invaluable lessons about resilience, about sheer tenacity, and about the crucial need for healthy boundaries in all our relationships.
It can also directly boost self-esteem and confidence, ironically. Or that immediate feeling of being useless or helpless after betrayal is so seductive, so overwhelming. The author argues we can deliberately choose to use this experience as a powerful spur to concentrate on our own personal development and self-improvement. It shifts the story from defeat to motivation for internal growth, helping redefine our strength outside of external validation.
And then we get to the really profound topic of the power of forgiveness. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Forgiveness is not a one-time occurrence. Rather, it is a state of mind that is maintained over time." The author expands on this. When we forgive those who hurt us, we are absolutely not condoning their actions. We're not saying it was okay. Instead, we're making a conscious, deliberate choice to let go of the horrible feelings tied to the betrayal, the resentment, anger, bitterness, and actively choosing to move forward for our own sake.
And a truly compelling aspect here is that forgiveness is presented not as weakness, but as this remarkably powerful tool. It lets go of that corrosive burden of resentment and anger, fostering compassion instead. By forgiving, we acknowledge that everyone, ourselves included, makes mistakes, causes harm. This perspective can help develop a more compassionate attitude towards others, even those who hurt us deeply. It's a strength because it frees us from that prison of bitterness.
It's really challenging to get your head around, but the author calls these the unexpected blessings that can come out of betrayal. Like finding a silver lining in the absolute darkest cloud, finding hidden gifts where you least expect them.
And these blessings, when you can genuinely embrace them, they are truly transformative. First, you gain strengthened resilience. Being betrayed. It's a gut punch, a profound emotional blow. But it's precisely in these tough times we build resilience, our capacity to pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off, and on with our lives. Each betrayal, painful as it is, inadvertently strengthens our ability to handle future challenges.
You learn you can survive it.
Exactly. Then there's improved discernment. Betrayal becomes this harsh but ultimately invaluable teacher. It helps us become way more cautious, more discerning about who and how we trust going forward. We demonstrably improve our ability to read people and their motives. That acts as a powerful shield, helping steer clear of similar situations, manipulative people in the future. It hones your intuition like comfort never could. Next, the profound rediscovery of self. When your worth gets questioned by betrayal, paradoxically, it can push you to rediscover who you are at your core, what you genuinely believe in. You might realize, maybe painfully, you've been compromising your own needs for others. That leads you to pause, reflect deeply on what's genuinely important, and actively strive to be your most authentic self.
That makes sense.
You also gain deeper empathy and understanding. While the initial anger and hurt are totally normal, valid, processing those feelings can eventually lead to a profound understanding of the betrayer's own anguish, their fears, their unresolved issues that drove their actions. You might recognize they acted from their own pain. This cultivates deeper compassion, not just for them, but for the universal human struggle. That can actually lead to more resilient future relationships. Sometimes, betrayal is actually freedom from toxic relationships. It can genuinely be a fortunate turn, a clear indication that the connection is unhealthy, ultimately detrimental. Acknowledging it, creating distance, that can liberate you from huge emotional burdens, making vital space for healthier, more positive connections to enter your life.
A painful exit ramp, maybe?
You could say that. And finally, profound personal growth and self-awareness. Being betrayed becomes this strong, undeniable motivator to examine your own frailties, your vulnerabilities, your biases in trusting. It compels you to improve communication skills and, crucially, establish and maintain healthier limits, healthier boundaries. This transforms a painful event into an unparalleled opportunity for lasting personal progress, self-mastery.
Okay, so as we shift gears a bit from betrayal by others, let's talk about that silent, often unrecognized enemy that so many of us are unknowingly fighting within ourselves. Self-betrayal and self-sabotage.
Right, the inner struggle.
Yeah. The author says many people dealing with addiction, mental illness, they're grappling with these energies of self-destructiveness, self-sabotage, and self-betrayal. Energies that, if we're not aware, subtly or overtly shape everything in our lives. At its core, when we're self-betraying, it means we don't truly love or accept ourselves. We lack self-compassion. We find ourselves doing things, consciously or subconsciously, that hurt ourselves, undermine our own progress, our own happiness.
To build on that, self-betrayal is essentially when you choose not to do what deep down you should do, or even what you actually want to do.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Oh, they're incredibly relatable, often daily things.
Mhm.
Not holding an elevator when you know you could,
Yeah.
feeling that strong nudge you should apologize, but then you just don't. Engaging in harmful addictions, knowing the health risks, but doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Other clear acts. Staying in toxic relationships where you're constantly mistreated, clinging to bad habits that diminish your quality of life, actively avoiding getting mental health help you know you need. We might procrastinate on finding treatment, call it laziness, but not realize self-betrayal is often the subtle underlying cause of that resistance. It's this internal conflict where our actions just don't line up with our authentic desires or best interests.
So what's behind that pervasive inner conflict? The author points straight to a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy.
Inadequacy.
Yeah. He explains that persistent patterns of self-betrayal often come from this internalized belief that we're unworthy, maybe from past trauma, neglect, abuse. We internalize those negative experiences, often blaming ourselves, which then, ironically, makes us turn against ourselves, engage in self-harming behaviors. Our natural, healthy instincts to protect and nurture ourselves get corrupted, leading to these daily, often subtle, self-betraying actions that just undermine our potential.
This raises a really important question, then. How do we consciously shift? How do we move from this destructive cycle of self-betrayal to one of genuine self-love, self-acceptance?
Yeah.
The author suggests a crucial first step is cultivating greater compassion for ourselves. This means consciously starting to think and speak to ourselves with encouragement, kindness, understanding, not harsh judgment.
Beating ourselves up doesn't help.
Exactly. Instead of judging ourselves for being hurt or making mistakes, we need to actively soothe that hurt. Offer ourselves the same comfort we'd give a dear friend. When stressed or overwhelmed, comfort yourself instead of piling on more anxiety or self-criticism. It's about consciously changing that daily self-talk, those daily actions, to shed those ingrained self-betraying patterns we've picked up over the years.
The author then really dives into the how question, specifically detailing the insidious forms of self-sabotage. He introduces it as any activity that stands in the way of your own objectives and ambitions, citing Alice Corney Selby from 2023. It's that incredibly frustrating pattern where we declare we want something and then go about making sure that it does not come to pass. Like there's an invisible force working against our own goals.
And the forms this takes, they're numerous, often subtle, remarkably common. First, procrastination.
Oh, yeah, the classic.
Probably one of the most common ways we undermine ourselves. We put stuff off to the absolute last minute or later, leading to huge stress, missed deadlines, lower quality work. It gives momentary relief from anxiety, sure, but ultimately sets us up for failure and reinforces that cycle of self-doubt.
Guilty as charged sometimes. What else?
Then there's negative self-talk. That damaging internal dialogue. It directly leads to low self-esteem, lack of confidence. We constantly tell ourselves, you're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable, effectively limiting our own potential, actively stopping us from taking chances or trying new things that could lead to growth. The fear of failure is another big one, often paralyzing. This fear can be so overwhelming, it stops us from even starting to pursue our goals. When we let that fear dominate, we inadvertently limit ourselves, miss out on invaluable opportunities for growth and achievement.
And surprisingly, perfectionism is also a type of self-sabotage, right?
Deeply ingrained, yes. The author quotes Ecclesiastes, "He who observes the wind shall not sow." Basically, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll do nothing. Hillary Hinton warns, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll be waiting till the day you die. Perfectionism causes constant worry, tension, burnout, sets impossible standards, ultimately stopping us from ever truly trying or completing things imperfectly but successfully.
That's insightful. What about more destructive forms?
Definitely. Self-medicating. This is particularly dangerous. Using substances, alcohol, drugs like cocaine, even excessive food or gambling to numb painful feelings or cope with stress. This can quickly spiral into addiction, severe health issues, relationship problems, and it keeps us from addressing the underlying emotional issues driving it in the first place.
Right, masking the symptom, not fixing the cause.
Precisely. And finally, engaging in harmful relationships. We might, unconsciously or consciously, seek out interactions that constantly reinforce negative self-views, feed our insecurities, or actively block our progress, rather than contributing positively. As the author says, engaging in relationships you know are detrimental. That's a profound form of self-betrayal. It undermines your own happiness, your potential. These behaviors altogether, they just insidiously impede our ability to act meaningfully, make progress, lead fulfilling lives, often causing us to avoid new possibilities, healthy intimacy, due to these unaddressed fears.
And the roots of this self-sabotage, they often go even deeper than we think. The author talks about childhood experiences, how we develop coping mechanisms that might have helped then in a tough environment, but become really detrimental as adults.
Yeah, like what?
Like if you grew up in a chaotic home, you might have unconsciously learned to avoid risks or not assert yourself. That then subtly shows up as chronic procrastination or debilitating indecision later on.
He also highlights the very real fear of achievement, especially after past rejections. If you've tried hard before and faced bad outcomes, painful setbacks, that anxiety about future disappointment can become intense, causing you to subtly avoid close connections or future opportunities. Our past really shapes our present, often in ways we don't consciously realize. And critically, a pervasive lack of self-awareness is a major factor. If we're not mindful of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, we might not even know we're constantly self-sabotaging. Makes it incredibly hard to change patterns, achieve goals.
But there is good news here, right? The author emphasizes self-sabotage isn't a character flaw. It's usually a symptom of something deeper, unaddressed. And crucially, it can be overcome.
That's hopeful.
Yeah. He acknowledges many of us heard things as kids, you can't do that, other demeaning stuff we internalized. But he assures us there's an inherent voice inside fighting that hopelessness, a core desire for growth. So what does this all mean for how we change? How do we shift these ingrained patterns?
It means embracing what he calls a humanistic and existential approach, a path focused on fostering self-awareness, cultivating deep self-acceptance, actively reconnecting with your authentic self. Here are some practical strategies. First, identify the root cause.
Okay.
This often needs real introspection, maybe professional help from a therapist or coach. They can help uncover past traumas, limiting beliefs driving the behavior. Experts can really guide us toward the future we want, map out how to resolve these foundational issues.
Right. Professional help can be key.
Second, practice self-compassion. Deliberately maintain a sympathetic, gentle attitude toward yourself, even when you mess up. Embrace yourself, warts and all. Treat yourself with the same care you'd give a beloved friend. Catch those self-defeating phrases like, "oh well, wasn't meant to be," if you use them to justify inaction.
Be kind to yourself. Got it.
Third, establish clear values and goals. Really reflect, what are your core beliefs, passions, what truly matters? Then consciously connect your daily actions to those values and goals. This helps prioritize what's important, actively reduces self-defeating actions. Remind yourself, your values define your character, map your desired future.
Okay. Values and goals.
Fourth, develop healthy coping strategies. Learn and actively practice healthy ways to manage stress, process tough emotions, navigate triggers. Things like mindfulness, regular exercise, engaging in genuinely joyful activities can be incredibly effective. But the author cautions, consult trained counselors. Some seemingly relaxing coping methods could, ironically, be harmful or addictive long-term.
Good point. Seek healthy coping.
Finally, seek support. Whether it's trusted friends, supportive family, qualified professionals, having people in your corner who keep you accountable, offer perspective, provide encouragement. Absolutely vital. Find a role model that can act as a confidant, someone who inspires you, understands your journey. Self-sabotage is tough to break, but by understanding its roots, consistently applying these strategies, we absolutely can overcome it, lead more fulfilling, authentic lives.
Now let's explore a dimension of betrayal that often cuts the deepest, sometimes really shaking us to our core, spiritual disappointment. Have you ever felt that profound sense of being let down by the divine or by institutions representing the divine? Maybe stopped going to church, stopped praying, just felt totally detached from your spiritual practices. The author suggests betraying our spirituality doesn't mean we're not spiritual anymore. Rather, it's a powerful sign it's time to rethink our perspective on karma, on the consequences of our actions, seen and unseen. He introduces karma from Buddhism and Hinduism, the accumulation of acts determining future fate across lifetimes.
And it's really insightful how spirituality goes beyond specific religions or cultures, right?
Right.
It focuses on universal concepts, meaning, purpose, connection. Well, the Bible doesn't use the word karma. The concept definitely resonates with the Christian idea that our actions will inevitably have repercussions. Hebrews 9:27 says, humans are destined to die once and after that to face judgment.
Right.
Psychologist Maya Spencer back in 2012 explained that after a deep betrayal, you can become spiritually alienated because of the faith you placed in the betrayer. It leads to this profound spiritual disorientation, a sense of a God who is absent. And author Julie Peters in 2024 highlighted this too, feeling deeply connected spiritually, then suddenly disconnected, abandoned after awful events like a personal tragedy or a global pandemic. Leaves you feeling spiritually betrayed.
So building on that, what exactly is spiritual betrayal? Calvin Corelli in 2012 defined it as that shattering experience when your faith in someone or something representing the spiritual, a priest, a teacher, a community, even your idea of God is profoundly let down or violated. When that sacred trust is broken.
And this brings up a fundamental question that hits most spiritual traditions. Horrible things happen to people who are trying their best. Why?
Yeah, the age-old question.
The Bhagavad Gita, with its as it is concept, sheds light on this complex reality. It says, we are obligated to fulfill our responsibilities, but we are not entitled to the results of our deeds. We naturally want to enjoy the fruits of our labor, right? But karma, in its intricate way, implies every action, intention, omission has a result, maybe reverberating across lifetimes or just unfolding in ways we don't immediately see. It's this concept that tries to explain why horrible things do happen to nice people. While the outcome isn't always up to us, we do control our intentions, our actions, operating within several levels of reality that we will never be able to fully comprehend. It's complex.
The author describes betrayal so vividly as a tray of unpleasantness. He says it's tough enough from a stranger, but the pain is just exponentially harder, soul-crushing, when it's a loved one, someone from your inner circle. The cold truth, he says, is in that moment, they weren't thinking of you. They were thinking of themselves, their desires, their needs. But then he flips it profoundly, saying, the best tray you can serve back is your own self-respect and self-worth. He acknowledges there'll be grief, anger, sure, but he urges us to actively use that anger as powerful fuel for personal growth, not let it consume us.
And thinking broadly, healing from these deep spiritual wounds, really, from any profound betrayal, often requires repeatedly hearing the same things from various angles. Spiritual healing isn't a quick fix, it's a continuous, multifaceted process. Here are some key points from the author for that path. First, the immense power of let it go.
Easier said than done.
Incredibly difficult, requires deep internal work. But the relief from releasing anger, finding certainty in God's superiority or some higher order, it's immense. The author says, in the end, the one who has to endure the pain of the stone is the one who wears the shoes. Meaning, fury and anger will rule your inner world until vengeance happens, or, more profoundly, until you consciously choose to release it. For those without a strong personal relationship with God, just saying let it go isn't enough. It involves sustained spiritual focused prayer, meditation, mindful practices to truly find a lasting solution.
Okay, what else?
Second, recognizing that anger is your fuel. Anger, despite its negative rep, is a powerful primal emotion. It can drive profound growth and healing, or can destroy you from within. The critical step, honestly assess, is your anger justified, constructive? Or are you projecting internal wounds onto the situation? While the author says there are no excuses for betrayal, he wisely observes betrayers often lie to themselves first. So releasing your anger not as forgiveness for them, but as liberation for you becomes a valid, essential first step towards healing.
Right.
Using anger constructively.
Third, the unwavering focus on healing within. This is the cold, hard truth we have to accept. We often can't expect betrayers to change. That is the way they are. Their patterns are deep. So we must do our own inner work to heal, independent of their actions or apologies. Despairing, asking why, it's natural, but you'll likely never get a satisfying answer from them. The finest plate you can serve back. Demonstrate your own self-respect, your ability to let go of bitterness, act with kindness not from weakness, but immense inner strength.
He uses that analogy, right, about fighting a pig.
Yeah, the vivid one. If you fight a pig, you will both fall into the mud, but you will feel more ashamed than the pig since it is used to circumstances like this. Powerfully shows that seeking retribution just lowers you to their level, makes it impossible to see who's truly righteous. Unpalatable maybe, but crucial for personal liberation, maintaining dignity. The author shares his own powerful story too, healing from a deep betrayal by a close friend with guidance from a spiritual director, emphasizing that every storm will eventually pass and we emerge stronger. He talks about how connecting deeply with your creator can be so satisfying, letting you discover and embrace your authentic self beyond the pain.
Which brings up an important question for all of us. How can embracing spirituality become a truly powerful, transformative tool in overcoming that turmoil from betrayal? First, through the power of good deeds.
Okay.
Actively doing positive, selfless things creates positive vibes, generates a ripple effect far beyond the immediate betrayal. This positive energy, he suggests, is so potent it effectively puts the devil to shame, meaning it negates the negative energy of the betrayal itself. Second, by focusing on personal growth. This is an intrinsically inward issue, not external, not dependent on the betrayer. It means consciously using the betrayal as a powerful chance to strengthen character, cultivate deeper resilience, expand your capacity for compassion for yourself and others. This path, he argues, leads to liberation from the cycle of suffering. Betrayal often starts.
Right, focusing inward.
Third, through embracing a fulfilling life. Understanding that karma or divine justice works on its own timeline in ways we might not grasp. The focus shifts profoundly from the betrayer and their actions to your spiritual path, your commitment to good deeds, your ongoing personal growth. This doesn't just overcome immediate pain, it deliberately sets the stage for a more fulfilling and enlightened life, regardless of what others did to you.
He does add a crucial warning, though, about choosing spiritual leaders or guides. Emphasizes the deep need for a profound relationship with God or a higher power to truly discern who's genuinely called to guide versus those just calling themselves leaders. That discernment, he stresses, is absolutely essential to avoid falling into even worse spiritual disillusionment or further betrayal.
Yeah, that's a vital caution. And the author reiterates, betrayal is among the most profound forms of emotional suffering we can endure, especially from those closest. The deeper the relationship, the more intense, often lingering, the agony.
And the Bible offers remarkably clear, though challenging, advice for this. Jesus commands us, pray for those who persecute you and turn the other cheek. Paul advises, never seek retribution, consciously leaving it to God's righteous wrath, ultimate justice. Not easy commands, but they point to self-liberation.
And a truly compelling aspect here is Psalm 55. Believed to be King David, responding to his son Absalom's betrayal and his close friend Ahithophel's treachery. It serves as this practical, empathetic guide. As biblical scholar Kathy Schaefer analyzes it, it offers several deeply human spiritual actions. First, look for God's help.
Okay.
When overwhelmed by betrayal's whirlwind, the safest place to turn is directly to the seat of grace of God, like David pleads in Psalm 55, 1-2. Clinging to God as rock and refuge, acknowledges Jesus himself knew betrayal's anguish, making God an empathetic confidant.
Second.
Take a time out. Betrayal is intensely painful, leaves us feeling alone, vulnerable. David's passionate wish to flee the chaos, find peace. Oh, how I wish I had wings like a dove. This gets the wisdom in creating physical, emotional distance from the betrayer, allows essential space to process emotions, seek solace, serenity, knowledge from God.
Okay, space is important.
Third, let God handle your anger. Seems weird, maybe blasphemous to some, but it's actually therapeutic to tell God exactly what you want done to your enemy, as David does. But this isn't endorsing your wrathful action. It's about cathartically processing the anger so it doesn't become a consuming grudge. Heeding the warning, not sin, by allowing wrath to establish reign over you. It's releasing the anger so it doesn't poison you.
Got it. Venting to God therapeutically.
Fourth, let God deal with our betrayer. Our human instinct is to strike back, seek retribution immediately, but it's imperative to refrain. David's unwavering faith in God's help shows profound trust that God will rescue him, acknowledging God's supreme justice. It's about relinquishing control, trusting a higher power.
Trusting divine justice.
And finally, forgive. Betrayal leaves us exhausted, guarded, mistrusting others, even our own judgment. David encourages relying entirely on God, the truly trustworthy one. As followers of Christ, as compassionate humans, we're called to show the same mercy we've received, Colossians 3:13, forgiving even when incredibly difficult, recognizing our shared human flaws.
So, what does all this mean for those complex ideas? Forgiveness and reconciliation. Are they the same thing? Or is there a really important difference?
Absolutely crucial to differentiate, as the author clearly does. Forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciliation. Forgiveness, he explains, is primarily a transaction between us and God, or between you and your own peace of mind. It's an internal, liberating act, freeing you from hatred, bitterness, resentment, restoring your relationship with the divine, or just your inner calm. It's profound self-liberation.
Okay, forgiveness is internal. What about reconciliation?
Reconciliation, on the other hand, is fundamentally mutual, a two-way street. It requires the betrayer to first admit that they have done something wrong, then seek for our forgiveness, and then take active, demonstrable steps to alter their conduct and genuinely regain our confidence. Without that active participation, sincere remorse, tangible change from the betrayer, true, healthy reconciliation just can't happen, even if you have forgiven on your end.
That distinction is critical. And the ultimate example, as the author concludes, is Jesus on the cross, uttering those incredibly hard words, "Father, Pardon them, for they do not understand that their actions are evil. It's an impossibly high bar, powerfully highlighting how true forgiveness, even without reconciliation, liberates us.
Hmm. A profound endpoint for that section.
Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's reflect on something incredibly common, often thought of as just virtuous silence. We've all heard silence is golden, right? But the author boldly challenges this, suggesting it's not as golden as we have been made to believe. Sometimes, he argues, silence can paradoxically do more profound harm than good.
It's really insightful to see the psychological take on silence here. Psychologists, philosophers, they often remind us intentional, mindful silence can unlock creativity, enable original thought. It promotes self-awareness, nurtures personal growth when we deliberately seek quiet. Suki and Elizabeth Novogratz, authors of Just Sit, recommend quiet time for profound personal good. Silence, they say, is about bringing about a slowing down of one's own pace, a deliberate break from modern life's noise. They believe the world would be way more compassionate if we all just slowed down, embraced more silence.
So, what are those tangible benefits of intentional, well-placed silence then?
The author details several powerful ones. First, it's a source of reawakening and solutions. Silence helps connect with our physical, emotional being, offers subtle nudges that something's off, often leading to surprising solutions or clarity. Second, it's the absolutely initial stage in emotional recovery, creates the space to gently turn toward, address challenging thoughts, feelings inadequacy, grief, anger with love, sympathy, and understanding. That's a profound act of self-compassion. Third, intentional silence can significantly enhance conversations. When we consciously choose silence, we listen more deeply, effectively. Allow others to contribute fully, feel heard. The key: listen to understand, and not necessarily to answer. Prevents chaotic exchanges driven by needing to respond, not comprehend. And finally, it's a powerful tool for emotional regulation. Silence creates that crucial gap that exists between a sensation and a reaction. Lets us pause, process, then consciously choose a calm, thoughtful response, not an impulsive, regrettable one.
It's simple, yet profound. Lao Tzu said, silence is a source of enormous power. The author encourages making quietness, not just noise, a deliberate routine to honor ourselves, gravitate towards practices allowing that vital internal space.
However, and this is a critical distinction, not all silence is helpful. The author makes a crucial pivot here, showing how silence itself can be a potent, even destructive form of betrayal.
How so? Many think of betrayal as an action, right? Reaching confidence, misleading. But what about inaction? Gandhi said, be the change you desire to see in the world. The author argues, we cannot expect change if we keep quiet. That is betrayal. It's a powerful challenge to our passive tendencies.
And from a psychological view, we might stay harmfully silent out of fear of conflict or for perceived safety. It could be more convenient to simply walk away and remain silent. Very common response. But the fundamental insidious issue: if we consistently engage in a habit of walking away or being mute about inappropriate behavior, then such behavior may appear to be widely acceptable by the majority. Philosophers remind us, no action is still an action. By choosing quiet in the face of injustice or wrongdoing, we're still making a choice, an action, but potentially on the wrong side of the coin, meaning we are, in a real sense, equally accountable for perpetuating that behavior.
Which brings us to that crucial concept weaving through the author's work: moral consistency. If you truly value honesty, integrity, courage, staying quiet when you know something's wrong, witness injustice. That can profoundly betray your own deeply held values, your authentic self. So the author urges us, give careful consideration to the circumstances under which silence is significant and those under which it is not significant. Otherwise, we will be committing the most egregious kind of self-betrayal. It's a powerful call to align actions with beliefs, even when uncomfortable or challenging.
A really thoughtful point to end on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, wow, we've journeyed through the profound pain of betrayal, explored its complex causes, subtle signs, and uncovered that surprising potential for growth and healing, even finding a spiritual path to peace and understanding the discerning use of silence. The author offers that harsh but vital reminder: trust is earned, respect given, loyalty shown. Lose one, you risk losing all three. They're inextricably linked.
And the author really emphasizes, while betrayal's hurt is undeniably profound, it should never destroy our faith in ourselves. He reinforces resilience isn't just a trait you have or don't. It's a talent, a skill that needs to be improved through practice and self-awareness. It's the very bridge that connects us from self-sabotage to self-improvement, transforming potential defeat into genuine strength. This means resilience isn't the absence of obstacles or pain, but rather the fortitude and inner strength to overcome such challenges. It's about how you carry the burden, not the burden itself.
You've absorbed so much with us today, from understanding the betrayer to recognizing the self-saboteur within, finding spiritual paths to healing. But here's one last thought for you to really mull over, something to take with you beyond this deep dive, integrate into your own journey.
Given that our immediate reaction to betrayal can often spring from a place of intense emotional vulnerability, leading us to say or do things we might later regret or maybe retreat in ways that don't serve us. How will you choose to react moving forward to ensure that it shall not be so with your response? Consider the intentional choices you'll make in your future interactions and how you'll nurture your own ongoing journey of personal growth and self-mastery.